What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome to my builds guide and refined review for Duo Lyn, Dedue, Erinys, Fernand and Miranda. So let us begin with Duo Lyn. This refine does not disappoint. So Tailwind Shuriken is a 9 might player phase brave weapon and it does have slaying built in it, and now it gives you the visible attack and speed +6 and gives you the penalty of -4 defense and resistance, so you could consider it like a life and death build in the weapon. And in the combat it can give you +6 attack and speed depending on the number of allies in 3 rows and 3 columns centered on her, which is pretty easy to do. And then she has got the Omni Feud effect built in her weapon, similar to Legendary Lyn. So this is an amazing effect because this allows you to ignore the miracle of someone like Duo Rhea. This also allows you to ignore any kind of the drive buffs that the enemies may be enjoying in the combat. Now of course we have a billion status effects that the enemy are still going to be taking advantage of, but this feud effect does help you clear the clutter and essentially make the enemy unit only depend on their own effects and the status effects that they've got. So feud cannot be understated. It is an amazing effect to have on a nuke built in their weapon, and this also has a CRUX effect built in it. So she has got -5 speed defense, 50% damage reduction piercing CRUX built in this weapon. So because it is a CRUX effect, it means that it is going to be getting applied in 3 rows and 3 columns centered on the unit, and it also gives you the guaranteed follow-up attack. So this acts like a pseudo half now follow-up for Duo Lyn, and it also helps the other allies on your team get the guaranteed follow-up attack even if they do not have any kind of guaranteed follow-up attack effect in their kit. And this does happen with a lot of these slow units who have to run stuff like Lagoose Friend, Spiked Wall, and they simply do not have any kind of way of getting the guaranteed follow-up attacks, so it does help you with that. And it also gives you the 50% damage reduction piercing. This means that Duo Lyn herself does not always have to depend on the lethality's damage reduction piercing to get rid of the pierceable damage reduction of the enemy. She is passively going to be doing that on every single hit because of this effect, and that is an amazing thing for a brave weapon unit like her because you're going to be attacking multiple times, and if you only pierce the pierceable damage on a single hit with lethality, then it can be a problem. So that's why doing it on every single hit does mean that you can also run Ruptured Sky or any kind of low cooldown special like that, but still you can keep lethality because of the damage output that it can provide you with. And this kind of CRUX effect does help quite a lot in game modes like Ether Raids or even in Arena and Arena Assault, where she's going to be getting used quite a lot. And then finally she gets the effect that she needed the most in true damage based on 20% of her speed. This is not going to be getting added to the AoE specials, and it's so important nowadays to have true damage in their weapon because there's just so much flat damage reduction out there that if you do not have true damage on your weapon or in your kit, then you're going to be having a miserable time even killing the enemies that are at 1 HP. So you do not want to experience that, and that's why having a layer of true damage in this weapon means that you can try and stack it up with other true damage skills and make sure that Duo Lyn's damage output can be a lot better than before. And this means that she is just going to be able to function much better as a nuke and get the kills. She of course does have her duo skill, which is essentially Gale Force, because it only gives you the extra action after you have entered into the combat in that turn. So this is extremely useful in Arena and Arena Assault, and she can use the Lyn Ring and then get the Gale Force. So she can move around essentially after attacking one of the enemies and then use that extraction to either retreat or go deeper into the enemy lines. And she does have the dual skill effect built in this duo skill, which can make her score like a 190 BST unit in the Colosseum game modes, which is not really much for the modern times, and there are multiple free-to-play units that can simply outscore her because of being a melee unit and being able to run the distant counter melee sacred seal or the distant counter dragon sacred seal. So she's not going to be your first choice for arena usage, but still, because she's a range unit, she can make your matches easier in terms of getting the kills from far away, getting the extra action, giving you the support. But in terms of scoring, she is going to be needing help of the other peak scoring units that we have right now in the Grail pool. So I'm pretty happy with the weapon refine that Duo Lyn got. I thought she would just get the short end of the stick because she was the free unit in a Hero Rises, but thankfully that was not the case, and she gets some good combat effects like the CRUX skill, the 50% damage reduction piercing, and the feud effect, which can really help you a lot. And at least she gets the bare minimum of the true damage, which is scaling off of her speed. So the best way to build her up is to stack up a lot of true damage. And even though this weapon refine isn't the most insane, and I wouldn't say that she has won this weapon refine batch itself, still it is going to be making her viable again if you're a big fan of her and if you have her at high investment. So even if you're trying to use her at low investment, if you just have her with a free copy from the Hero Rises, then you can simply run Windsweep in the slot B and keep all of these skills the same. And you can run Emblem Cigarette Ring so that you can get some Canto, because her weapon doesn't give her any kind of Canto whatsoever. They pretty much want you to run one of the lookout skills on a dagger unit like her. So you could run that on a budget and then run her with any kind of support unit who can give her null follow-up, like Legendary Sander or Attuned Azura. Both of them are going to be pairing up well with her, and this way she's going to be able to quad attack and the enemy are not going to be able to counter attack, as not a lot of them are going to be having null counter disrupt built in their kits, especially if they're armor. So this does allow you to easily attack them safely even at this kind of low investment. And if you're trying to use her with a bit more of a modern skill set, then if you happen to have Winter Yanaka and Attuned Ivy, then she can basically run this build, and also Fatal Smoke Fork for completely eliminating the usage of Miracle against her. Now of course she already has the feud effect in her weapon, so she doesn't need Fatal Smoke all that badly, but still this does help her against the units that have the Miracle for themselves and they're not getting it externally. So it can help you in those matchups, and as I said, stacking up the true damage is extremely important. So that's why Assassin Strike is one of the better skills that you can run in her slot B. So the main use case of this is going to be the true damage, but keep in mind that it scales off the enemy's defense. So it is going to be another way of true damage, but it's not going to be scaling based off her speed. And then Flared Sparrow can help you set up the flame terrain, and having some kind of Divine Vein terrain is helpful on a unit nowadays because it means that you can override their ice tile or their stone tile, really anything. So this can help you set that up and then try and retreat away from the ranged enemies after setting up the flame terrain. And then Soaring Echo is also going to be nice, but just keep in mind to not use Flared Sparrow and Deadly Miasma at the same time. It is not recommended to run two terrain skills in your kit like that, so either pick Deadly Miasma with Attuned Ivy's fodder or pick Flared Sparrow with Yunaka. And then we've got the penultimate build using an upgrade of Flared Sparrow into Slice the Sparrow, which gives you the true damage on every single hit. And as I said before, they pretty much want you to use any kind of lookout skill in her slot C. So if you have Rearm Layla, then you can run Lookout Force. It is definitely not as good as Active Lookout on Ninja Lyn, but you can still try and outsource the Desperation status from someone like Emblem Lyn or Fallen Ursula even, who is a bit of an older unit. And you can even use Firestorm Dancers so that you can get the Desperation effect, as if you just have Rearm Layla in her fodder, you can still make use of Lookout Force, and you can also keep Assassin Strike if you do not have the best slot B skill available for her, and it is gonna be Speed Taker, no doubt. So not only it gives you another layer of true damage based on 20% of her speed, but this also gives you the Null Guard effect, which is amazing for a brave weapon user like her, and that's one of the effects that she's missing in her Refine, so getting that out of her slot B is so good. An Active Lookout is going to be the best slot C skill for her because it is going to be giving you the Desperation effect, which is amazing because you don't have to depend on your allies to get that. You can just run allies that can boost up your damage output and help you nuke much better, like Ninja Lucina or Spring Plumeria, and of course you're going to be facing hardy bearing tanks, so that's why the Scowl effect of Future Witness is going to be helping you. But still, Lyn is not going to be all that bulky, and she still may just die to the raw hits, so that's why trying to kill things in 2 hits is always going to be better and something I would recommend. And you can try and trigger lethality on her second attack, if you give her the special cooldown support from Lucina and then pre-impelled support from Plumeria. So it is possible to do that, but it is going to be taking a bit of support, and it's not going to be the easiest with a unit like her. You can also try and give her the special charges support from someone like young Elise, for example, so that way you also boost up her damage output with the Treachery. And with the Null Guard support, she can easily trigger lethality on her second attack with the Brave hit if she just has a 2 cooldown lethality with the support. So as I said, for having the best nuking, especially against the hardy bearing tanks, a bit of support is going to be needed, but this is the best build that you can run on Duo Lyn right now. Lethality with Lyn Ring allows you to nuke from a distance, and this also means that you can get the Canto and then swap someone and move them forward, and then they can initiate and finish off the enemy team. So the positioning of the lookout skills is so good that you just cannot leave it for the best build. Duo Lyn was used so much in Ether Raids, she was such a threat, and if you want to use her again, then you can just have some updated skills. Full Disarm is going to be helping you be immune to any kind of traps, so it helps you get rid of them. And you can also run Potent Disarm if you do not have this, but ultimately I do prefer the Null Guard and the in-combat debuffs of Full Disarm. It's so easy to get the true damage out of Slice the Sparrow in Ether Raid's offense because you have mythics like Rune, Peony to give you the extra status effects, and then Active Lookout gives you the Desperation without requiring Emblem Lyn support or any kind of Firestorm dance. And this also means that you're going to be having a tough time against the common hardy bearing Far Saviors. So just as a backup, you could try and use Ymir for her Miracle, and that's one of the ways of dealing with the hardy bearing Far Saviors. But if they have Emblem Erica Ring, then you're still going to be dying because of their Brave attack. It is certainly going to be a bit hard to justify using her over Emblem Lyn, who's just so insane as a nuke, and she can start to nuke from turn 1 onwards compared to a Lyn Ring nuke like Ninja Lyn here. But still, I guess the main reason you would try and use her is if she's your favorite, and if you just want to have a unit for disarming the traps. So there, it can be helpful, and she also gives you the lookout support so that you can just make your units come forward after she nukes something, and then you can just go in with a melee nuke like Valentine Edelgard or Emblem Erica. Finally, at the end, if you want to use her in Arena, then you can run a build like this. Soaring Echo is going to be helpful, but unfortunately it's not going to be letting you warp your Marnies because she is an armor, so you would have to run Guidance for Inner Slotsy if you wanted to do that. But you could also run Ground Orders as a Sacred Seal to just give her the order status to at least help her warp a little bit. But you can also warp yourself using aerobatics, so it's up to you and your team which kind of warping you want. And of course, Speed Taker, Slice the Sparrow, and Active Lookout is going to be giving you the best long-range sniping with the Lyn Ring in Arena. And the CRUX support is also so good because if you have some kind of budget build on someone like Marnie or any other unit, then the 50% damage reduction piercing and the guaranteed follow-up attack helps a ton. While you're not going to be able to warp your Marnies with Soaring Echo, you're still going to be able to warp stuff like Panette and your Fallen Lloyd that you may have, so it is still helpful for the warping support. And then she also gives you the lookout support, and positioning is so hard to achieve in Arena, especially if you do not have some of the insanely premium units that have the extra action with their assist, or if you have stuff like repositioning gate on your units. So that lookout support is also really fantastic and underrated in my opinion for a game mode like Arena. The winner of this Refine patch, in my opinion, is Dedue, and it makes me incredibly happy to say that because the competition as an Axe Armor was just so insane. But here he is with his Taciturn Axe, which does debuff the enemy about -18 to their attack and defense roughly. It does depend on the visible defense that you have got on Dedue, but it's not really all that hard to achieve the visible 60 defense with a unit like him who already has such high base defense. And then he also gets true damage based on 30% of his defense, and then flat damage reduction on 30% of his defense. Now this is not going to be getting added to any kind of AoE specials, and the way he gets the flat damage and true damage is interesting because he needs to be within 3 spaces of his support partner to get the 30% scaling of the true damage and flat damage reduction. And if he's not, and if there's no support partner on the team, then he's going to be getting at least 20% scaling for his flat damage reduction and true damage. It is not really all that inflexible in my opinion, and it's quite easy to do it because usually you can just have another armor as a far save who can have the higher attack, and then you can scale off your flat damage reduction and true damage based on them. And if you do not have them, then again it's pretty easy to use the ally support mechanic and make sure that he gets the full scaling. And even if he doesn't, like 20% scaling is still good. And the fact that he has got 30% scaling means that he has got the highest percentage scaling for the flat damage reduction right now in the game as a unit. Now of course there are many units who can get more flat damage reduction with their weapon effects, but I'm just talking about the pure scaling. The 30% is the biggest number right now when it comes to flat damage reduction. We usually do not see that on many of these units, even modern units on these banners. So that's an amazing thing for Dedue, and that puts a ceiling far above compared to a lot of the other axe armor that are just going to be using something like Arcane Giant Axe, for example. But unfortunately, because this is a weapon without the slaying, it means that his shield fighter builds are not going to be as good because he's not going to be able to take advantage of Pavis with Emblem Marth to get the damage reduction. But still, the shield fighter saviors are going to be having trouble nowadays anyways against Legendary Ira, Valentine, Edelgard, and also of course against young Camilla, no doubt. So you can still run the other skills for stacking up the flat damage reduction, and then he gets 7 HP healing after the combat. And he also sets up the Stone Divine Vein terrain after acting, and also at sort of the Ether Raid's defense enemy phase. And it is similar to Attuned Hector, and that's one of the reasons why his Refine is good, but not the most insane right now, because we all have gotten Attuned Hector for free, who can set up these stone terrains just like that. And he's a modern unit with a lot of flat damage reduction, and he's also really solid both as a far savior and a near savior. So he is gonna be good out of the box compared to Dedue, who does need quite a bit of investment. So that's why that is gonna be the reason why you're not gonna be seeing Dedue that much now that we have got Attuned Hector as the winner of Hero Rises. But still having another armor that can set up the stone terrain is going to be helpful for Summoner Duels S and also for Arena Assault. It can give you an alternate armor who can set those up, and that can help you set them up middle of the turn after someone like young Camilla sets up her haste terrain. So that kind of overriding of the terrain is going to be quite helpful with Dedue. And then finally he gets the null debuffs effect, which means that none of the debuffs are going to be affecting him, and that's why you don't really need to run Slick Fighter or really any kind of Unity skill on him, because he has this effect built in his weapon, and he is a viable near savior with this kind of weapon. So if you like him a lot, then you're going to be able to use him, but it is going to be taking a bit of investment and also a bit more of a support, because he doesn't have the highest resistance, and that is going to be coming to bite him, because there are a lot of units with the Hexblade effect like Brave Felix, Emblem, Erica. So you would need to run Mystic Boost Sacred Seal so that you can disable the adaptive damage of those Hexblade effect and just make them target his high defense. As a far savior, he would need a lot of merges and investment, because far saving is another ball game, but still he is able to do that if he runs Hardy Bearing. But again, any kind of mage targeting his resistance is going to be able to do much better damage output, and that is going to be troublesome for him. So if you're going to be running Dedue after this refine, then you just need an extra copy of Gilliam for the Vengeful Fighter 4, and you can just run Dedue with Emblem Erica Ring to get the Brave effect, and Dedue can hit pretty hard with the true damage that he gets on every single hit. And if you get the Brave effect out of the Emblem Erica Ring, then it is going to be meaning trouble for any kind of nuke or any kind of tank that's going to be attacking you. And Vengeful Fighter 4 gives you the guaranteed follow-up attack and also the special charges, so Ignis is something you can try and trigger a bit more easily, especially if the enemy doesn't have guard skills. And if they do, then you can also provide him with the null guard support from someone like Ronan, for example. And as I said, Mystic Boost Sacred Seal is going to be needed. And if you're going to be investing a bit more into him, then you could try and make use of the Thiazi combat manual. But if you cannot give him the fodder of Attuned Hector, or if you don't want to, then you can try and make use of Brave Alphonse and his fodder. Reopening is certainly inferior to Wily Fighter 4, no doubt about that. But you can still try and get the flat damage reduction and true damage out of it. And Dedue is quite slow. He doesn't have guaranteed follow-up attack in his weapon, so you are able to leverage reopening to its full potential. You also get fortifications at the same time, and because you set up the stone terrain even without engaging in the combat, it means that you get the distant counter effect out of it without running distant counter echo as your attuned slot. And of course, as a near savior, Mystic Boost is gonna be perma-locked in your Sacred Seal. And you can also run Emblem Erica as the ring because you are able to get the Brave attack, and even if you're reducing your attack by a bit with the fortifications, he still hits incredibly hard. So this is one of the ways of building him up, but the standard way is going to be using the both combat manuals from the Divine Codes with Thiazi and Attuned Hector. The combination fodder of these units is going to be giving him the perfect build, which is amazing because he can make this out of the Divine Codes, so you don't really have to hunt down these kinds of attuned and rearmed units, and this is a build that you can do for certain. And you can also run Emblem Sigurd so that not only you can position yourself better, but if it comes to it, you can even initiate combat in your player phase, because unlike Vengeful Fighter 4, Wily Fighter does function in the player phase and you still get the guaranteed follow-up attack. And the dull all effect out of Wily Fighter is really helpful because you already have the null debuffs, so this is the perfect slot view skill for him right now. And then he can get the extra bulk out of the Earth Fire boost, and Twin Save is going to be needed so that he can have that extra layer of damage reduction out of Armored Blaze in case the enemy triggers multiple specials. Dedue being able to set up the stone terrain can also be used in Aether Raid's defense, along with Hathrin, who can give him the Divine Nectar and the healing, which is going to be making him even more powerful, and Freyr is going to be giving him the cleansing and resonance shield effect. So you can run Deflect Melee, and the reason why I opt for Deflect Melee for Aether Raid's defense build is because you do not know if you're going to be facing an Emblem Erica nuking you or Young Camilla, and Deflect Melee does well against both of the units. So in Aether Raid's defense, if you're going to be running him, then going for the Resistance Super Boon does help if you're not going to be running Mystic Boost Sacred Seal. And honestly, I kind of prefer having Deflect Melee as the Sacred Seal when we have got Young Camilla as one of the units that can attack your team. So that's why Deflect Melee helps you against the Brave attacks and also any kind of Desperation units like Young Camilla, which have Trample. And Emblem Erica Ring means that you're just going to be able to kill them on retaliation without any kind of trouble while being extremely bulky. And if you want to run him as a Far Savior, then Primordial Boost is something you're going to be needing because it gives you +9 defense and resistance. The speed is whatever, it doesn't matter. Of course, the best perfect skill for him would be the variant, which gives him the +9 attack, but still, right now, this is going to be the best option in a way to get +9 defense and resistance, and also get another, layer of healing after the combat. And this means that you can try and loop the Miracle from Rhea, and Rhea can be the near savior of choice here. She also gives you the 7 flat damage reduction. Seteth can also be run with Breath of Life 4, and he can also give you the flat damage reduction support. So stacking up the flat damage reduction is going to be making Dedue into a better Far Savior, and he is going to be needing all of that support. As a Far Savior, Hardy Bearing is going to be helpful against the Desperation nukes like Emblem Lyn and all of her allies. And then finally, for a max near save build, again, Mystic Boost Sacred Seal is something you'll need, and if you're going to be running Mystic Boost for sure, then he could try and ascend his attack asset so that he can hit extremely hard and kill things on retaliation. And Dedue's killing power is no joke with the true damage that he can get, and when you combine it with the Emblem Erica ring for the near saving matchups, it is absolutely amazing the things that he can do. And again, Primordial Boost is going to be giving you the extra defense and resistance, and you are going to be missing out on the guard effect from the usual boost skills, but you could run that as an attuned slot if you're going to be having the max investment near save build. And then Nidhogre could be used as the Far Savior to pair him up with so that she can give him the dosage status, and also he can give her the stone terrain. Erinys had a lot of potential with her Refine because she could use the conditional brave effect to become a really fearsome melee nuke, and I'm happy to say that this Refine does not disappoint and it does capitalize on her conditional brave effect. So Celeste Frost is a 16 might brave weapon essentially, which is conditional, but it also gives you +3 attack, and then it has got Canto 2 built in it, so you do not need to run Cigarette Ring just for the Canto. You can easily get the extra movement out of Rain Snap or Endless Tempest, and then for the stats in the combat, you're able to get +17 attack and speed and +16 defense and resistance. So Erinys is not exactly a complete glass cannon. She still gets some defensive perks, and she also gets the 7 flat damage reduction on foes' first attacks, which also helps her survive things when combining all of these effects with an Excel skill or Haste Slice. And then she has got the full null follow-up built in her weapon, which is amazing because this means that she can quad attack quite easily and even consecutively hit with any kind of desperation effect, being a faster unit. And this null follow-up is amazing for also living against any kind of slower enemy that may have any kind of guaranteed follow-up attack and stuff like that. And then we come to the dual phase brave effect, which was the signature effect from Erinys, and now it has been improved to become a dual phase brave effect, and you just need to be in 4 spaces of the support partner or the highest speed ally to get this effect, which is pretty flexible. It's not that hard to have a high speed ally on an offensive team, and it's also not hard to have a support partner that is usually going to be on the front lines, where Erinys is going to be in 4 spaces of them, and then at sort of player phase and enemy phase both, to herself and the allies in 2 spaces, she's going to be giving out the +6 attack and speed buff, the cooldown +1 status, and also the dot status. So the cooldown +1 status is good for triggering your specials easily because Erinys does not have a slaying weapon and she can't get the brave effect, so it can be helpful to trigger stuff like No Quarter or Haste Slice, but I would not recommend running Emblem Marth Ring with those specials because it will be penalizing you for your damage output because of her having the brave effect. And this is also helpful if you want to run her with Gale Force, I suppose, but most of the time she's going to be used with some other special. And Dodge does not have the best damage reduction as all of its damage reduction is pierceable, but still it does give you the AoE damage reduction for your fast tanks, so it does have usage there, and it still helps Erinys as an offensive nuke herself to live, and she's not going to be a pure glass cannon like I said, and this is also one of the reasons why. And then finally we've got the true damage based on 20% of her speed, which is not going to be getting added into the AoE specials, and you also get the Canto out of this weapon and a decent amount of support. So Erinys is honestly a really solid melee nuke. Of course, there are some insane melee nukes like Young Camilla nowadays, and then Restvalgar, and also Mythic Restvalgar, but I think that Erinys is still viable with this kind of weapon refine if you run her with the right skills that can boost up her damage output, of course, as a brave attacking unit. So Erinys fans should be really happy, and one of the things which I really like about her is that she doesn't need to run Emblem Erica Ring because of having the dual phase brave effect. She doesn't need to run Cigarette Ring necessarily because of having Canto in her weapon. So that's 2 of the rings which are out of the picture. Celica Ring is amazing for her. Marth Ring is not recommended again because she has a brave weapon. So Celica Ring is pretty much going to be her best ring, and it also gives her flexibility in the future, depending on what kind of emblem rings we get. So even on a budget with the Divine Codes fodder, I think you can make a decent build. So Fallen Lilith is going to be giving you Dive Bomb and Attack Speed Catch 4 at the same time, and Dive Bomb here is going to be giving you the Desperation effect, which is amazing as a brave weapon user. And if you face hardy bearing opponents, then you still have some flat damage reduction to fall back upon with her Refine. Of course, it is not going to be much. And then Bright Theory is going to be giving you Rain Snap, which is one of her better slotsy skills because you already have the Canto 2 in the weapon. So you no longer need Emblem Cigarette Ring with a build like this, as you get the extra movement, and you also support her allies even more with the extra movement. And then you also get no quarter out of Winter Dimitri. You can even run Gale Force if you want to. Attack Speed Prime is a pretty good Sacred Seal for her because she already gets the 2 visible status effects, so it is quite flexible to use. It of course doesn't give you as much offense as Blade Session or even the Clash Guild, but still its consistency is something that a lot of people do value. And if you have certain fodder units like Attuned Ivy or Legendary Valentia, then you can make an upgraded build of the first build that I've shown. You can get Meteor from the Divine Code, so that is an amazing skill for a brave attacking unit like her, getting the true damage on every single hit. And then Aerial Maneuvers gives you the Desperation and the Warping, so even though she doesn't have the aerial maneuvers built in her weapon like Anand, she can still take advantage of it. And then Deadly Miasma and Soaring Echo from Ivy are both going to be good skills. Deadly Miasma lets you set up the haste rain and also gives you the dull all effect. And this is a pure player phase focused build, which also has a good amount of warping with Emblem Celica Ring with aerial maneuvers. In the future, with this build, you can also run some other Emblem Ring if you want to, but right now, this can also help you warp near the enemy and then attack them and then retreat. And if they are near you, then you of course have the option of still warping with aerial maneuvers. But if you want to run her with Haste Slice, then you could try and run her with Momentum. So the pre-impulse from Momentum and Haste Slice will stack up, and it will make it so that you can front load your damage on your first attack by triggering Haste Slice, and then you get the flat damage reduction from the Excel skill from your weapon with the Haste Slice, and that is going to be helping you survive. And you also can trigger Haste Slice on your brave attack if you face any kind of Scal enemy, and you'll have to outsource the damage reduction piercing with this build, which is not that hard to do nowadays, because even in this batch we have got Duo Lyn with her damage reduction piercing CRUX, so she could be run as an ally, or even Nidhogger, who can give that as a status. And then you can get the true damage out of Momentum, and as I said, Emblem Celica Ring is her best ring right now, so Momentum, Excel, Clash all synergize well with it. You can also run Rain Snap to have another way of mobility with the extra movement, and you of course already have the Canto. So with the Excel and Haste Slice, it can just make it so that you do not need Desperation that badly on Erinys with one of her skills, and she can just try and kill things with her 2 hits by front loading her damage, and if they do not die, then she has a decent amount of survival, and then she'll quad attack and probably kill them. And then you can also run Assault Force, which in my opinion is the best slot B skill for her. So for a brave attacking unit like Erinys, the best case scenario is already killing enemies in your first 2 hits, and for that you would need to stack up a lot of true damage. So Assault Force does scale off her speed by 20%, and it also gives you the null debuffs effect, so she doesn't care for that anymore. And then Slash the Sparrow is easy to trigger with the status effects that she gets out of her own weapon, so it's nothing really all that hard. And I would say that Endless Tempest is something I prefer a bit more than Rain Snap. The reason being is flexibility. You do not need to have infantry or armored allies on your team, and Endless Tempest also gives you the dull all effect, so I like it quite a bit more because of the dull all effect, because many enemies nowadays are just going to be having the baked in visible buffs that they always get, so that's why having this is helpful when you already have the Canto in her weapon. And you can just try and outsource the Desperation effect from Emblem Lyn or any of those units, or a Firestorm Dancer, and hit incredibly hard. But like I said, the best case scenario is killing enemies in your first 2 hits, because there's no way that they can stop you from doing that if you stack up a good amount of true damage. And that's why Legendary Sakura can also help you in that pursuit, as she can give you the extra true damage, and she also helps you run away super far back, ignoring any kind of counter control. So she is automatically going to be a good choice with any kind of melee nuke like this. And then you can also run her with the best slotty skill for her in Trample. This is an extremely expensive skill because it comes from young Camilla, who is the best melee nuke in the game right now. Some may even consider her the best nuke overall, but this is going to be giving you the desperation effect. This also gives you the true damage, and this is perfect because you do not have to depend on any kind of ally to get the desperation effect. This build is going to be self-sufficient, and then you combine her best slot B and slot C skill in Assault Force and Endless Tempest to consistently get the +1 movement. You can also run Speed Taker with Brutal Tempest if you want to, that's an option. You're basically going to be improving upon your Canto by a bit, and Speed Taker, while it does give you the true damage based on your speed, it doesn't have the damage reduction piercing like Assault Force. So overall, I would say that Assault Force is a much better skill, and that's why I call her best slot B skill. And if you want to use her in summoner duels, then you can try and use her with Pass so that you are not stopped by any kind of warp blocking, which is going to be there on any kind of good team. And then you warp using Emblem Celica Ring, and you can Brave Attack with her weapon, get the Desperation out of Trample, and Fatal Smoke is going to be there to completely eliminate any kind of chance of the enemy triggering their non-special miracle from Duo Rhea. So that is going to be helpful to make sure that you kill the enemy and then you return to your teammates using Legendary Sakura support. Fernand gets Proud Spear as his preferred weapon, and this has got Counter 2 built in it. He also gets Omni +10 to his stats in the combat, and he has got true damage based on 20% of his defense not being added into the AoE specials, which is a bit weird because he doesn't have the highest defense to begin with. I mean, it does look a bit higher if you compare it to his speed and resistance, but in the grand scheme of things, it is not really all that high. So it's a bit weird that his true damage scales off his defense and not his attack, which is a much higher stat. He also has the guaranteed follow-up attack built in it, so as a slow unit he can take advantage of it. And a bit of a unique thing for Fernand is going to be the debuffs that he can do to the closest foes, and then it splashes to the foes that are in 2 spaces of them. So he can debuff them for -7 attack and defense, and then he debuffs them for Discord and Stalled status. Now Stalled status is still useful because a lot of units use the Emblem Sigurd Ring, and if you can affect them, then it does mean that they have limited mobility, but still, we're talking about mobility in a metagame where we have so many warping options. There's Emblem Celica Ring that they could also run if they already get the +1 movement out of some kind of support unit or any other skill of theirs. And there's also the fact that there's Emblem Sigurd with the Gallop status, and his Gallop status is immune to Stalled status because Stall only counters the +1 movement and not the +2 movement that Gallop status gives him. It's kind of stupid, but unfortunately he's not able to counter Emblem Sigurd. So while Stall does seem a bit more unique, in practice it is not the biggest deal. Usually the most used Stall unit is going to be Duo Thor, but she's used because she's Duo Thor with her Duo button. She is the big equalizer. It's not because of her stalled status, I would argue. And she's also a flyer, so she can provide the mobility. Fernand, unfortunately, does not have any of those things. So while this is unique, it's not the most insane effect. And then we have got Guard on him, which is kind of a dead effect many times because we just have so many preempt pulses and null guard effects on the modern units and even on these refined units that guard effect doesn't matter too much. Of course, in some matchups it can help you. And then finally, he has got the 7 HP healing after the combat. So his weapon refine is a bit of a sad case because he doesn't get any kind of flat damage reduction akin to Fallen Orson. I guess they didn't want to make him too similar to him, another Lance Cavalier from the Grail pool, and that's why they just gave him the true damage. So because of that, he's primarily going to be focusing on hitting as a nuke, being a Cavalier, rather than trying to tank things. But then they made him have the true damage scaling off his defense, which is again a bit odd. So the best way of using him is going to be as a supportive nuke who can debuff the enemies and then hit hard with Emblem Erica Ring or with the support of Desert Marissa. So those kinds of brave support effects are what makes Fernand better with his higher attack stat and the true damage he gets. So that's one of the ways of utilizing this weapon refine. Fernand is going to be needing a lot of Dragon Flowers, merges, and if you just want to make a decent build that is on the budget side of things, then you can give him Lull Attack Defense 3 from Young Xander, who's a free-to-play unit, and then he's going to be in the Grail shop later on. And without spending too many Divine Codes, you can just get Grandpa Mycin and use him to give Fernand the Clash 4 version and also join Close Guard, so at least you have some decent slotsy skill that he can try and use. And because he is going to be supporting his allies with the debuffs, it's not the worst thing ever. And because he already has the Canto in his weapon, you don't really need to run Sigurd Ring immediately. You can still try and get the better mobility by warping, but of course this does mean that warp blocking is going to be a problem. So Celica Ring could be run, and if you do find the warp blocking to be a problem, then Emblem Erica Ring is also one of his best rings, because the Brave attacks with his high attack stat, his true damage, is going to be helping you quite a lot. So this is on the budget side, and if on the budget side you still want to make a supportive build, then you can try and give him the fodder of Rearm Crom, and also from Grandpa Mycin and Winter Dimitri, you can just have no quarter instead for the damage reduction piercing. And snack support is quite good because you can inflict the sabotage status on the enemy, and that along with the debuffs that he already does is so good. And the snack debuffs is middle of the turn, and it also debuffs the enemy speed, so you're able to debuff the 3 stats of enemies with his weapon and this lobby skill. So that's why the speed variant is a bit better on him, instead of running the attack defense variant, which is going to be completely overlapping with his debuffs already. And then infantry speed tactic can give the null follow-up support to a lot of the other units. It's not the best slotsy skill for the support, but this is something we could try and do on a budget. And then you have some off-focus units or extra copies of these units, then you can use them to make a bit better build with attack defense excel that you can get out of Odor Master 1. So if you do not have the other units for providing you the excel skill, then he's going to be one of the older units, and he's also sparkable on the remix banners. Then we also have Brave Bernie, who can give you the Assassin Strike, and with the Emblem Erica Ring, trying to get the true damage out of Assassin Strike is going to be really helpful, but it is going to be scaling off of the opponent's defense that we're going to be debuffing a bit. But still, the enemies nowadays just have so high of a defense stat that it is still going to be giving you a decent amount of true damage. And even attack wave N is a bit of an underrated option for Emblem Erica usage, because it does give you the true damage on every single hit. And even attack wave N can also work well with Fernand and his high attack stat. So it's actually good for nuking, and it's not the worst option as a Cavalier where you do not have too many options to begin with. And if you want to go the full supportive route with Fernand, then you can try and give him the detect skill and also attack speed, insight tone, and mercy wing echo, which you can all try and duplicate using attuned Azura, so you can get all of those skills. And then attack defense excel could be obtained from Ultra Master 1. You can just run him with this supportive build, try and give the true damage out, have the middle of the turn debuff, give the lull speed defense to your allies map wide, give yourself and the allies the insided status and the attack and speed buff. So he is going to be taking more of a supportive approach, and that is one of the options with Fernand if you are just bored of making a lot of combat oriented Lance Cavaliers, and if you want to make him a bit differently. And then finally, you can also give him momentum from Emblem Sigurd if you have him. Fatal Smoke 4 and Attack Defense Excel are also perfect on him. And then you can run Haste Slice. So Haste Slice and Attack Defense Excel gives him the damage reduction in the player phase to survive a lot of things. And then you can try and get the Brave attacks using Desert Marissa. And Desert Marissa can give you the Brave attacks without using Emblem Erica Ring. So you can still have the Celica Rings warping, then you get the Canto out of the weapon, and Lull Echo is an optional attune skill that you could run, but for Fernand, it is going to be the optimal route for taking the fodder away from Alm. And then finally, at absolute max investment, Assault Force is going to be the best lobby skill because it can rival the true damage given to you by momentum. It doesn't have the pre-impulse built in it, but still, It is really powerful for giving you the passive damage reduction piercing, which is helpful when running Haste Slice as your special, and it also gives you the null debuffs effect. So all in all, it's an amazing skill for him. And then you can also run Odd Defense Wave to get the full tempo effect, Lull Echo giving you the Dull All effect or the Lull effect, and then Excel and Haste Slice give you some survivability. So Emblem Erica Ring is fantastic on him to get the brave hits. And as I've been saying, either you run Emblem Erica Ring or you run Desert Marissa support, it's up to you. But I kind of prefer running Emblem Erica Ring on him so that I do not have to run Marissa, and instead I can run a unit like Attuned Azura for the extra movement support and the Insighted status. Or you could even run Jill. She can just give you the +1 movement to your Fernand and also give you the visible buffs and null follow-up status, which can be decently helpful because he's not the slowest, I suppose. His stat spread is a bit oddly allocated, so that extra movement support can help you get the mobility while you get the power out of the Emblem Erica Ring. Not everyone can win in the Weapon Refine rebatches, and Miranda reminds us of that because she has got a painfully generic weapon. So she's got Tome of Fury, which has no fury in itself, and it instead has the Raven Tome effect, which is decent, I guess, for attacking the Far Saviors that are colorless. But still, the weapons triangle advantage hasn't really been relevant for a while nowadays because of a lot of the other effects and the stats that you can try and get. So, I mean, it can help, but it's not the biggest deal. And then she can get Omni plus 10 in the combat, and she has got true damage based on 20% of her resistance, and that's not going to be getting added into her AoE specials. So this is the true damage, which can improve her damage output a bit more because she doesn't have the highest attack stat. And then she also gets the 7 flat damage reduction on foes first attacks, including the brave hits, and she gives out the support to herself and the allies in 2 spaces in the form of +6 attack and resistance buff, the Dull All status, which so many units can give, and the Hexblade status, which also so many units can give. So the support that she provides isn't too unique. At least like Fernand has got stall status, which is not all that commonly seen, but for Miranda she gets not the most hard to get status effect, so even as a supportive unit, she's really not going to be standing out much. And then she's got guaranteed follow-up attack because she's also not the fastest, and then she's got the 7 HP healing after the combat. So all of these effects are a bit generic and they don't really focus on a single thing that she wants to do. It's just all over the place, and when you're gonna be trying to do too many things with a unit like this, with a stat spread like this, then you end up doing nothing basically. So it's really unfortunate that she got this kind of refine as a demote unit. Ilyana, Lex, Seteth all just had much better luck. Miranda is going to be a bit tricky to build with her stat allocation, but still you can try and do that with the fodder Vine Codes, but still it is going to be some expensive fodder with Attuned Bridget and Rearm Marianne. And I mean, getting Arcane Blood Gang as an alternative option isn't the worst when her weapon, you know, does not set the highest bar for the quality. So you can get the Tempo Echo, Perfect Attack Speed, and Creation Pulse at the same time from Bridget, which is all really helpful to Miranda, getting the Null follow-up, getting the Preempt Pulse basically, and when you stack it up with the Preempt Pulse status, you can immediately trigger Iceberg, and you do get the debuff from Speed Resistance Discord, and it also gives you the true damage and makes productive use out of her resistance. So this way you're able to get a lot of in-combat debuffs on the enemy speed, and that's why Discord skill is so good for the units that have, you know, a bit of usable resistance like her. And this can help you have a better stat swing because you are going to be having the Dull All effect with her Weapon Refine, and then you debuff them heavily and also inflict them with the Discord status. Iceberg does work fine, you can even run Glimmer, but if you don't really have any of the other expensive specials, then, you know, just using Iceberg with some pre-impulse support with this build is going to be doing a decent job. But if you want to really maximize her offensive build with the perfect attack speed and the fodder of Attuned Bridget and Marianne, then Pulse Deploy is going to be the final piece of the puzzle. So you can get that, and also Frost Moon from Athos, which is going to be hard to get, but that's why this is the expensive build. And Pulse Deploy can help you bring down the special cooldown to 2 when your Lyn ring is going to be active, and then because of the Brave hits and because of the pre-impulse support, the Desperation support of Emblem Lyn, with these 2 units, you're able to Brave attack and also stack up a lot of true damage and also make use of her resistance. And Tempo Echo does give you the Null Guard, which is perfect so that you can trigger Frost Moon on the double attack. And in the scenario where you face any kind of unit that is going to be so fast that she cannot double, the Frost Moon's pre-impulse is going to be there as an insurance. But the main reason why we're going to be using Frost Moon is because it comes with Athos and it also scales up for her resistance and gives you the full piercing when it triggers. So it doesn't matter that you do not get pre-impulse out of it consistently. What matters is the piercing and the scaling using one of her higher stats. If you want to go the defensive route, then you can try and run a close bonus doubler build. Of course, it is not going to be the best case thing for her because you only get 7 flat damage reduction out of her weapon. But still, you know, she can give herself and her allies the visible buffs. So when you combine Ectinier and his bonus doubler status, you do get a lot of stats which you can stack up with the bonus doubler, but that does not mean that you're not going to be needing some external support for tanking. So that's why Sethith can be helpful, or even Duo Rhea if you want to use her. And Lagoose Friend is going to be giving you the flat damage reduction and true damage based on her resistance. And you also get the full damage reduction piercing. Oddspeed Wave also gives you the full null follow-up, and it does work out with this kind of stat stacking build because she already buffs up her own attack and resistance. So with this, she's able to have most of the buffs that she needs, and then Ectinier fulfills the other role of, you know, heightening your buffs and making it even better for you with this kind of playstyle. So it's a fun build if you don't want to go the offensive route with Attune Bridget's fodder. So this refined batch was amazing with Ninja Lyn, Dedue, and Erinys getting amazing refines, but unfortunately Fernand and Miranda had to pay the refine tax and they were not able to get the best refine, especially Miranda. And next month we're gonna be having a refine and remix for Medius and also Legendary Mer, so you can look forward to that. And you can click the link on Instagram right now to check out my breakdown of the new Young Fates banner. And you can also subscribe and hit the notification bell because YouTube sub boxes are about as functional as giving Fernand defense-based true damage instead of his attack. So with that, I'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much for watching and have a great day.